So, let me start this video with a very important statement that I'm sure many of you can agree with. I hate modern dating culture. I hate the discourse around it. I hate being a participant in it. I kinda hate that I'm even making this video adding to it. But I feel like it's something that I should address and take a stab at least once on this channel, and hopefully I never have to again. But like many of my videos, this essay topic was inspired by yet another episode of my favorite cartoon, The Boondocks. At this point, I should really start keeping a tally of all the times I mention The Boondocks on this channel. I swear, I do watch other things. Sometimes. But The Boondocks is the kind of show that keeps on giving when it comes to art that raises interesting moral and societal questions, conundrums, and, quagmires, quandaries, dilemmas. Yeah, let's go with dilemmas. The specific moral dilemma of this video relating to modern dating culture all stems from this clip of everyone's favorite 8-year-old troublemaker, Riley Freeman.
Riley, all women are not hoes. But if they not all hoes, then why I got to pay to take them out to eat then? You're not paying the girl, you're paying the restaurant. But I'm paying, which makes her a hoe. Why don't I just give her the money I was gonna spend on dinner, and that hoe can go grocery shopping?
To those of you who might be unfamiliar with Riley Freeman, Riley is the brutally honest, fiercely opinionated, loudmouthed, and brazen foil to the main character of the show, his older brother Huey Freeman, who is some of those things, but in a very different way than Riley is. I think the best way that I could describe Riley is by letting him describe himself.
Describe Riley Freeman in one word.
I say real nigga.
Real nigga is 2 words.
I know it's 2 words, nigga. Real niggas don't follow instructions.
Throughout many episodes of the show, the brothers' conflicting ideologies and motivations often end up becoming the central plot and friction of the episode. And this friction and conflict creates some of my favorite fights, conversations, and interactions in the history of television. I've always thought the genius of Riley's character, similarly to the appeal of Huey's, isn't just in the things that he says and does, but the fact that it's an 8-year-old boy saying and doing those things. Whether he's talking crazy to a British drug lord, or starting up a local fight promotion and pressing the attendees for money that they owe him, or exploiting his granddad's non-existent blindness to get famous on reality TV, or of course breaking down the flawed ideology that many men subscribe to that every woman is, well, a hoe, or a hoe to be at least.
I don't see what the big deal is, just saying hoe. Ow, you smacked me.
If you've been paying attention to the internet discourse when it comes to dating culture, or if you have someone in your life with similar misogynistic views on women that Riley has, then you most likely have heard these talking points in one form or another. Women are nothing more than financial burdens who men have to support monetarily if they want any hope of getting the ultimate prize, which is, of course, ass.
I really need some ass first.
Well, not just ass, but hopefully you get my point. And even though I try to abstain from misogyny as much as possible, as a straight man living in a male-dominated society, my mere existence kind of perpetuates misogynistic ideals, so forgive me if I still hold some opinions that aren't perfectly in line with modern feminism or womanism or whatever the hell we're calling it nowadays. And even though I mostly disagree with Riley's admittedly hilarious tirade about dating dynamics and view them as ridiculous and short-sighted, I have to admit that I do see some truth in what he says, or at the very least, I can see how someone would reach that same conclusion. There are still many women who believe that it's the man who should be paying for dates and dinners and any other kind of related courtship activities. There are also many men who believe the onus should be on the man, whether they have the money or not, to financially provide for the woman that they are courting or a partner, especially in the early stages where strong first impressions are key. The amount of tweets, podcast clips, and think pieces I've read that have the phrase 50-50 somewhere in the title have resulted in me seeing red even at the suggestion of any kind of division. My main issue with Riley's monologue and the misogyny that it perpetuates is that it's all predicated on the idea that the man is paying for a nice dinner or buying a woman nice things because that's the only way he can convince her to be with him and reward him with sex, status, or, I don't know, a new Lego set, whatever men want out of life. When in reality, if you as a man feel like you have to do all of that for a woman to be with you, then she's probably not the one for you in the first place. I promise you. When women genuinely like you, they will look past all of your inadequacies and your red flags and everything else you lack to be with you. But I also believe that if this is a woman that you truly love and want to be with, not just as a sex object or a sign of status, or someone who buys you Lego sets, but someone you genuinely enjoy being around and spending time with, then you should probably want to spend your money on her the same way that you would spend money to buy things that you enjoy having or experiencing. And it shouldn't feel like it's some reluctant chore or obligation to do so. As I said earlier, The Boondocks is my favorite cartoon of all time, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. In fact, it has a very big flaw that this episode and this clip especially highlight very well. And that issue is women.
Lord, please pray for the soul of this bitch and guide my pimp hand and make it strong, Lord, so that she might learn a hoe's place. Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
Like, not only are there barely any notable female characters, the few that I can actually name are Crystal, the lazy hoe from this episode, Sarah, Tom's white wife, who starts out pretty solid and then just gradually treats Tom worse and worse until she's just an ungrateful, borderline adulterer, Jasmine, Tom and Sarah's mixed-race daughter, who I do think is a great character but is criminally underused, especially after season 1, Luna, the killer kung fu wolf bitch, who is actually pretty dope but is also a psychotic abuser and proverbial landmine who literally ends up blowing herself up in the same episode that she's introduced in, Ebony Brown, who was supposed to be an unattainably perfect example of a woman and also kind of a sensible Boondocks fan, and Huey and Riley's Aunt Cookie, who is, I guess, alright, but is only in like 2 episodes. Oh yeah, then her, I guess.
Come and pry it from my cold, dead hands, boy.
But the issue in the show isn't just in how it handles the female characters, it's also in how it handles the topics around females like this. Riley's speech here about women being hoes is funny. Like, I laughed the first time I heard it and I still laugh 20 years later, but there's something off about how Huey, who is supposed to be the voice of reason in many instances, especially when it comes to arguing with Riley, just kind of lets Riley cook with this one. Like, he gives a little pushback at first, but the scene ends with Riley making his point pretty firmly and Huey just sitting there dumbfounded, basically suggesting that Riley, for once, is actually the voice of truth here, and Huey can't really believe it or has no response for it. And I get it. It's a comedy at the end of the day, and these scenes need to be funny. But when you look at the entire show as a whole and focus on its less than stellar track record with dealing with women and how it depicts many women the few times it actually bothers to, it makes it harder to take this conversation in this scene as a joke, and more so as the writers telling you how they really feel about women and how gender roles should be played out. Which, as a longtime fan of the show, unfortunately sounds a lot more like some incel bullshit than I would like to admit. I'm not saying that the show promotes hatred of women or is overly sexist or misogynistic compared to other shows of its time, but it's definitely more sexist and misogynistic than it probably should be, considering the other messages it promotes outside of gender issues. But back to Riley's main point, are all women hoes and are all men tricks spending money on these bitches?
No, a trick as a motherfucker would be out spending money on these bitches.
My answer is no. I mean, statistically, yes, some are, but I wouldn't consider taking a woman out to eat the same as paying her directly for sex. At least it doesn't have to be if you take the time to know who you're dealing with and understand what you both want out of this relationship. Dating in the early stage of a relationship should be more about getting to know each other. The focus should be less on where you two are going and how much money is being spent, and more about what kind of experience you're having while you're there. I don't know, man. I always just found it hilarious that so many men have this idea that spending their hard-earned money on a woman they're interested in is like the ultimate sucker move. Like, it is okay to treat people, especially women, nicely every now and then, my guy. Now, I will say that I do agree that some women expect too much from men when it comes to dating, but to allow the small minority of delusional women who expect much more than they're worth to completely cloud your judgment and deem all women as godless whores and succubi that only want men for their money is pretty ridiculous and a little embarrassing, honestly. And even though I feel like I'm only really scratching the surface of this topic and would dive deeper and give you more of my own personal insight, I'm starting to feel like a hacky relationship guru or maybe even a bootleg Kevin Samuels. And it's starting to feel a little corny, honestly. The more and more I get into this video, the more I realize it's not really my style. But at the end of the day, like I said, I just wanted to try it out and give you my point of view. But this video is probably just another instance of me overthinking a random clip from a show that I love in order to make some digestible content for you all. So don't take me or this video too seriously. Unless you want to, I don't know. Do whatever you want, I guess. Just stop blaming the opposite sex for all of your problems. Actually, I do have one more thing to say about dating and dating culture. And I'm only saying this because it's something I've pondered for years, and I actually want to know what you guys might think about it. From what I've seen from other couples over my lifetime and just how dysfunctional and unhappy so many people are, I've always held the belief that most couples in general should not be together. And most people are not really ready to be in serious relationships. Whether it be issues with emotional immaturity, emotional illiteracy, severe trust and abandonment issues, some people just stink like whatever the reason would be out of the plethora of options. So many of us are critically flawed lovers and partners, yet instead of working on ourselves first to make sure we become the kind of person who is truly ready and deserving of fully reciprocated love, so many of us skip that step and choose to instead throw our damaged and trampled souls into the bottomless pit of despair that is the modern dating scene and hope we happen to collide with a mutual longing spirit and bond with them to cover our past injuries and heal together. But much more often than not, that doesn't really happen. We just cut ourselves more deeply with every new failed partnership. But I think my biggest issue with modern dating culture is both men and women seem much more interested in exposing the hypocrisy and the illogical beliefs of the other side instead of trying to genuinely understand one another and come to rational agreements on how dating in the modern world should be. Men and women are inherently divided, but in the age of the internet, that divide feels so much more severe than it ever was before. So many people cling to toxic and unhealthy relationships because they're terrified of being single and living alone. They instead choose to live a mutually mundane and miserable life together with whoever they've chosen to become content with. Not happy or fulfilled, but simply content. And that specifically has always blown my mind, that people choose to be unhappy when they could find a way to be happier in a different circumstance. And this is again just me rambling about shit, but I would love to hear someone explain why so many people choose this option over just living alone and living without a partner. I don't even really know what my ultimate goal is with making this video, but I guess in the end, I just want people to do what actually works for them and not try to shape their love life into another person's image of what dating and love should look like. A hopeless dream? Probably. But it's one that I'll hold forever. I'll talk to you in the next one.